In the underworld, debts are paid in blood, and mercy is a luxury that gets you killed. But sometimes, fate plays a twisted game. When Clara Vance, a struggling night shift nurse, found an elderly woman bleeding out in a rainy alleyway, she didn't know she was holding the heart of the city's most dangerous crime family in her hands. She thought she was just saving a life. She had no idea she was signing a contract with the devil. When Lorenzo Valenti, the capo of the New York syndicate, found out who saved his mother, he didn't give Clara a thank you card. He didn't give her a suitcase of cash. He did something so unexpected, so terrifyingly possessive, that it shook the entire criminal underworld to its core. This is the story of how saving a life almost cost Clara her soul. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Clara Vance adjusted the strap of her worn-out tote bag, stepping out of the back exit of St. Jude's Mercy Clinic. It was 3:17 a.m. Her shift had officially ended an hour ago, but the pile of paperwork and the endless stream of overdoses and bar fight victims had kept her late. Again. She wasn't a doctor. She was a nurse practitioner who did the work of 3 surgeons for the pay of a fast food manager. Her student loans were a crushing weight on her chest, a constant reminder of the medical degree she had to abandon when her father got sick. Now she lived paycheck to paycheck, eating vending machine crackers for dinner. The alleyway behind the clinic was usually empty, save for a few dumpster-diving raccoons. But tonight, the air smelled different. Beneath the scent of wet asphalt and garbage, there was that metallic copper tang Clara knew too well. Blood. Clara froze, her hand gripping the pepper spray on her keychain. A low groan echoed from behind a stack of wooden pallets near the loading dock. "Hello?" Clara's voice trembled, but her instinct to heal overrode her instinct to run. "Is someone there?" Another groan. This one was wet, a gurgle of fluid in the lungs. Clara rushed forward, dropping her bag into a puddle. Behind the pallets lay an elderly woman dressed in a coat that probably cost more than Clara's entire year of rent, pure cashmere, soaked in dark crimson. She was clutching her side, her silver hair plastered to her forehead by the rain. "Help me," the woman whispered, her eyes losing focus. Clara dropped to her knees. "Ma'am, I'm a nurse, let me see." She pulled the woman's hand away. It was a gunshot wound, through and through, just above the hip bone. Not immediately fatal if the bleeding stopped, but the woman was going into shock. "Who did this to you?" Clara asked, ripping the scarf from her own neck to create a pressure pad. They are coming back," the woman gasped, gripping Clara's wrist with surprising strength. "You must leave. Leave me." "Not happening," Clara gritted out, pressing down hard on the wound. The woman cried out, "I need to get you inside, but the back door locked behind me. I have to carry you to the front." "No time," the woman wheezed. "Black sedan, the corner." Clara looked up. At the end of the alley, headlights cut through the rain. A sleek black vehicle was creeping slowly, prowling like a shark. Tires crunched over gravel. Panic spiked in Clara's chest. If she dragged the woman to the main street, they'd be seen. If she stayed here, they'd be cornered. Clara looked around frantically. The industrial dumpster. It was unlocked. "I'm sorry about this," Clara whispered. "Do it," the woman hissed, understanding immediately. With a strength born of adrenaline, Clara hauled the older woman up. The cashmere coat was ruined, heavy with rain and blood. They scrambled behind the massive metal bin, just as the car's high beams swept over the pallets where the woman had been lying seconds ago. The car stopped. Doors opened. Heavy boots hit the pavement. "She couldn't have gone far," a man's voice growled. It was deep, American, but with a cadence that suggested violence was his native tongue. "Find her! Finish it! The boss wants the message sent tonight." Clara held her breath, pressing her hand over the old woman's mouth. The woman was trembling, her skin clammy. "Check the clinic," another voice ordered. "The doors are locked. No forced entry." The footsteps came closer. Clara could see the shadow of a man holding a suppressed pistol stretching out against the brick wall. He was 5 feet away. Clara looked down at the woman. The bleeding was slowing, but she was fading fast. If they found them, they were both dead. Clara Vance, age 26, death by execution in a dumpster alley. Suddenly, sirens wailed in the distance. Not just one, a whole fleet. "Cops," the first man cursed. "Someone called it in. Let's go. If she's bleeding that much, the cold will finish her off." Car doors slammed. Tires screeched. Clara didn't move for a full 2 minutes. Only when the silence returned did she exhale. "You're okay," Clara whispered, checking the woman's pulse. It was thready. "I'm getting you to the ER. Now." She dragged the woman to the front of the building, banging on the glass, until the night security guard, old Mr. Henderson, woke up and buzzed them in. "Call Dr. Evans," Clara screamed as she hauled the woman onto a gurney. "GSW to the abdomen. Stat!" As the team took over, wheeling the woman into the trauma bay, Clara collapsed onto a plastic chair in the waiting room. Her hands were covered in blood. Her scarf was gone. She had just saved a stranger. She didn't know that the woman was Donatella Valenti, the matriarch of the West Coast crime syndicate. And she certainly didn't know that by saving her, she had just invited the wrath and the obsession of her son. 3 hours later, the waiting room of St. Jude's was no longer a quiet place for sick people. It had been transformed into a fortress. Clara was scrubbing her hands in the staff bathroom, trying to get the dried blood out from under her fingernails. She was exhausted. She should have gone home, but the police had arrived, and then others had arrived. Men in suits. Men who didn't look like cops. They stood at every exit, silent as statues, watching everyone. When Clara stepped out of the bathroom, the air in the corridor felt heavy, pressurized. The hospital administrator, a nervous man named Dr. Finch, was sweating profusely as he spoke to a man standing by the trauma unit doors. Clara stopped. She couldn't help but stare. The man was tall, well over 6 feet. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that fit him so perfectly it looked like a second skin. His hair was dark, swept back, and his face was a landscape of sharp angles and brutal beauty. But it was his eyes that froze Clara in place. They were the color of cold steel, devoid of warmth, scanning the hallway with predatory precision. This was Lorenzo Valenti. Clara didn't know his name yet, but she knew power when she saw it. "I want the name of the person who brought her in," Enzo said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried down the hall like a thunderclap. It was one of our nurses," Dr. Finch stammered. "Nurse Vance. She was off duty." Enzo turned. His gaze locked onto Clara instantly. It felt like being caught in the crosshairs of a sniper rifle. He walked toward her. The men flanking him, his personal guards presumably, moved in sync. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. Did I do something wrong? Are they here to finish the job? Enzo stopped 2 feet from her. He smelled of expensive cologne and gunpowder. "You are Vance?" he asked. "Clara." She corrected automatically, her chin lifting slightly. She hated being intimidated. "Clara Vance. You found my mother." It wasn't a question. "If that's the woman with the gunshot wound, yes. I found her behind the clinic." Enzo studied her face, looking for deception. "You were leaving late?" "I work hard," Clara said defensively. "Is she okay?" "She is stable. Because of you." Enzo took a step closer, invading her personal space. "Did you see who did it?" Clara hesitated. She remembered the shadows, the voice. "I saw a black sedan. I heard a voice. American accent. He said the boss wanted a message sent." Enzo's jaw tightened. A muscle feathered in his cheek. The rage radiating off him was palpable, heat coming off a furnace. He looked at the man beside him, a scar-faced brute named Sterling. "The Gallaghers," Enzo said quietly. "They broke the truce." "We will handle it, sir," Sterling said, his hand twitching toward his jacket pocket. Enzo turned his attention back to Clara. He looked her up and down, noting her frayed scrubs, the cheap sneakers, the dark circles under her eyes. He saw poverty. He saw struggle. But he also saw the defiance in her eyes. "You saved the life of Donatella Valenti," Enzo said. "Do you know who we are?" "I have a feeling you aren't in the import-export business," Clara quipped, instantly regretting her sarcasm. Enzo didn't smile. "No, we are not." He reached into his jacket pocket. Clara flinched, expecting a gun. Instead, he pulled out a checkbook. He uncapped a fountain pen and scribbled something, then tore the check out. He held it out to her. $50,000, Enzo said flatly, "for your trouble and for your silence. You saw nothing tonight. You heard nothing. You found an old woman who fell, and you brought her inside. Understood?" Clara looked at the check. It was more money than she made in a year. It could pay off her car, her credit cards, and a chunk of her student loans. But something about his tone, the dismissal, the transaction, sparked a fire in her gut. He was treating her act of humanity like a business deal, like she was a prostitute being paid to leave the room. Clara took the check. She looked at it. Then she looked Enzo in the eye. She ripped the check in half, then in quarters. The hallway went dead silent. Sterling's mouth dropped open. Dr. Finch looked like he was about to faint. "I didn't save her for money," Clara said, her voice shaking but firm. "And I don't accept bribes to keep my mouth shut. I'm a nurse. I save lives. That's the job. Keep your money." She shoved the confetti-like pieces of paper into the chest pocket of Enzo's expensive suit jacket. "Now, if you'll excuse me," Clara said, stepping around the most dangerous man in the city. "I have another shift in 6 hours, and I need to sleep." She walked away. She didn't look back. If she had, she would have seen the look on Lorenzo Valenti's face. It wasn't anger. It was shock. Total, utter shock. No one said no to him. No one disrespected him. And certainly, no one threw $50,000 in his face. Enzo watched her walk out the automatic doors and into the rain. "Sterling," Enzo said, his voice low. "Yes, boss. You want me to grab her? Teach her a lesson?" "No," Enzo said, a dark, calculating look entering his eyes. "Find out everything about her. Where she lives, who she owes money to, who her family is. Everything." "Why?" Sterling asked, confused. "She's just a nurse." "She's not just a nurse," Enzo murmured, touching the torn pieces of paper in his pocket. "She's the only honest thing I've seen in 10 years. Enzo turned back to the trauma room. "The Gallaghers tried to take my mother. They failed. Now they will come for the witness." "The girl?" "Yes," Enzo nodded. "She is in danger because of us, and she just refused my money. So what do we do?" Enzo buttoned his jacket. "We don't pay her off. We own her." "Sir?" "Get the car," Enzo ordered. "Clara Vance just became a liability. And I don't leave liabilities walking around unprotected. Tomorrow morning, her life as she knows it is over." Clara went home to her tiny, drafty apartment, locked the deadbolt, and collapsed into bed. She thought the nightmare was over. She thought she had survived the night. She was wrong. The nightmare hadn't even started. The adrenaline crash hit Clara hard around 5 a.m. She'd managed 2 hours of fitful sleep in her studio apartment, which smelled of burnt coffee and damp drywall. When her alarm screamed at 7 a.m., she felt like she'd been hit by a truck. She tried to convince herself the previous night had been a hallucination induced by exhaustion, but the dried blood on her favorite sneakers was very real. Clara dressed in fresh scrubs, grabbed an apple, and unlocked her 4 deadbolts. She had to get back to the clinic. Life went on. Bills had to be paid. She opened her apartment door and stopped cold. Standing in the dim hallway of her tenement building were 2 men. They weren't wearing Italian silk suits like Enzo Valenti. They wore leather jackets, stained jeans, and expressions of pure malice. One had a tattooed neck that read, "Gallagher Crew." "Clara Vance," the tattooed one said, cracking his knuckles. It wasn't a question. "Who are you?" Clara tried to slam the door, but the second man booted it open, sending her stumbling backward into her tiny kitchenette. "We're the cleanup crew," the tattooed man sneered, stepping inside and pulling a jagged combat knife from his belt. "You saw something you shouldn't have last night, nurse. The boss says no loose ends." Panic cold and sharp, pierced Clara's chest. Enzo was right. They had found her in less than 4 hours. "I didn't see anything," Clara lied, backing up against her mini-fridge. "Please, I just helped an old lady." "Liar," the man snarled, lunging forward. Clara grabbed the only weapon available, a ceramic mug from her dish rack, and hurled it. It smashed against the man's forehead, stunning him for a second. It was enough time for her to scream. Before the second man could grab her, the hallway erupted in noise. The door behind the Gallagher thugs splintered inward. Sterling, the scar-faced giant from the hospital, filled the frame. He held a silenced pistol in each hand. Foot! Foot! 2 soft coughs, and the Gallagher men dropped to the linoleum floor, blood pooling around their heads. Clara pressed herself against the fridge, hyperventilating. Sterling stepped over the bodies as if they were dirty laundry. He looked at Clara, his expression entirely blank. "Mr. Valenti sends his regards." Sterling droned. "Grab your things, you're leaving." "Leaving? Where? You just killed them." "They were going to kill you. Now, let's go." "Before the cops show up to ask questions you can't answer." Sterling grabbed her arm. His grip was iron. "Wait! My phone, my purse." "We have everything you need. Move." He didn't escort her. He extracted her. Sterling dragged her down the fire escape, threw her into the back of the same black sedan from the night before, and locked the doors. The windows were heavily tinted. She couldn't see out, and no one could see in. They drove for 40 minutes. Clara huddled in the corner of the leather seat, shaking uncontrollably. She was a hostage, a prisoner of war in a conflict she didn't understand. The car slowed, turning onto gravel. Through the windshield, she saw massive wrought-iron gates swing open. They were entering an estate that looked more like a fortress than a home. High stone walls topped with razor wire, security cameras panning every angle, and armed guards patrolling the grounds with Rottweilers. The Valenti mansion sat on a cliff overlooking the Sound, a sprawling Gothic monstrosity of gray stone. Sterling hauled her out of the car and marched her through mahogany double doors. The foyer was bigger than her entire apartment building, featuring a marble staircase and a chandelier that probably cost more than a small country's GDP. It was dead silent, cold, and terrifyingly austere. "The study," Sterling said, pushing her toward a set of tall doors. Clara stumbled inside. The room smelled of old books, expensive scotch, and the lingering scent of Enzo Valenti's cologne. Enzo was standing by the fireplace, staring into the flames. He held a tumbler of amber liquid. He didn't turn when she entered. "Did they hurt you?" he asked, his voice low, devoid of emotion. "Your gorilla dragged me out of my house after murdering 2 people in my kitchen." Clara snapped, her fear transmuting into anger. "So, yeah, I'm not great, Enzo." He turned slowly. The use of his first name seemed to surprise him, but he didn't correct her. His ice-blue eyes assessed her, looking for physical damage. "They were Gallagher hitmen sent to gut you like a fish," Enzo replied calmly, taking a sip of his drink. "Sterling saved your life. Again because of me. I don't want your protection. I want to go home." Enzo set the glass down with a sharp clink on the mantelpiece. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. "You have no home to go back to, Clara. The Gallaghers know your face. They know your name. If you leave this estate, you will be dead within the hour. And they won't be quick about it. They enjoy their work." He walked toward her. The sheer presence of the man was overwhelming. He sucked the air out of the room. "My mother is alive because of you," he said, stopping inches from her. "Donatella Valenti is the only thing in this world I care about. You saved her when others would have run." "I'm a nurse. It's what I do." "No, you're brave, stupid but brave, and you insulted me by refusing my money. A flicker of something, amusement, respect, passed through his eyes. You tore up $50,000. That intrigued me." "I'm thrilled to be of interest," she retorted sarcastically. "Can I leave now?" "No." The word was absolute, a prison bar slamming shut. "You can't keep me here. It's kidnapping." It's protective custody, Enzo corrected. But you are right. I can't just keep you here as a guest. People will talk. The Gallaghers will think you're just a witness I'm hiding. They'll keep coming. He circled her, like a predator inspecting a new acquisition. I need a reason for you to be in my house. A reason that tells the world you are untouchable. A reason that says if anyone harms a hair on your head, I will burn their entire lineage to the ground. Enzo stopped in front of her again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. Clara stared at it. Her breath hitched. What is that? Enzo opened the box. Inside sat a diamond ring the size of a quail egg, set in platinum. It glittered menacingly in the firelight. It was the Valenti family heirloom ring. You are no longer just a nurse, Clara, Enzo declared, his voice leaving no room for argument. As of this moment, you are my fiancé. Clara's jaw dropped. You're insane. I won't marry you. It's not a request. It's a position. You will live here. You will provide private, round-the-clock care for my mother as she recovers. And in public you will wear this ring and pretend to be the woman who captured the heart of Lorenzo Valenti. He took her limp left hand and slid the heavy, cold ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Why? She whispered, horrified. Because, Enzo leaned down, his breath hot against her ear, no one touches what belongs to me. And now, Clara Vance, you belong to me. The first week in the Valenti mansion was a study in psychological warfare. Clara was given a suite in the East Wing that was larger than the entire floor of her old clinic. It had a 4-poster bed, a walk-in closet filled with designer clothes in her size, Sterling was terrifyingly efficient, and a balcony overlooking the cliffs. It was beautiful. It was luxurious. It was a prison cell. Her phone had been confiscated. The landlines were monitored. The internet access on the provided laptop was heavily filtered. Every exit had a guard. Clara tried to escape on day 3. She managed to slip past the kitchen staff and make it to the garden wall during a shift change. She was scaling an old oak tree, aiming for the other side of the razor wire, when she looked down. Enzo was standing at the base of the tree, arms crossed, wearing an immaculate suit and an expression of profound boredom. 2 Rottweilers sat obediently at his heels. The drop is 20 feet, he called up, and Duke and Baron haven't had breakfast yet. Your choice, Tesoro. Clara climbed down, seething. He didn't punish her. He just smirked, took her arm, and escorted her back inside to dinner, where he forced her to sit at the opposite end of a 20-foot dining table and eat lobster risotto in silence. Her only solace was Donatella. The matriarch was recovering in a heavily medicalized suite on the ground floor. Donatella Valenti was nothing like the frail victim Clara had found in the alley. Even bedridden, hooked up to IVs, she radiated power. So, Donatella rasped the first time Clara entered the room to check her vitals. Her eyes, the same icy blue as her son's, tracked Clara sharp. You are the little bird who pulled me out of the gutter. I'm Clara, Mrs. Valenti. I'm your nurse. And my son's fiancé, I hear. Donatella let out a dry, hacking laugh that made her wince in pain. Lorenzo has a flair for the dramatic. Let me see the ring. Clara reluctantly held up her hand. The diamond felt heavy, a shackle weighing her down. Donatella gripped Clara's hand with surprising strength. That ring belonged to my grandmother. It has seen much blood, cara mia. It is not a trinket. It is a target. I didn't ask for this, Clara whispered, checking the dressing on Donatella's side. The wound was healing nicely, thanks to her care. None of us ask for the life we get in this world, Clara. We just survive it. Donatella softened slightly. Thank you. For what you did in the alley. You have fire. You refused his money. I like that. Lorenzo needs someone who doesn't bow to him. He doesn't seem to agree. He treats me like furniture. He treats you like a possession because he doesn't know how to treat anything he values any other way, Donatella warned. Be careful with him, Clara. My son is a weapon that has been forged in very hot fires. He will protect you with his life, but he might crush you in the process. As the days turned into weeks, Clara settled into a bizarre routine. Mornings were spent tending to Donatella, who regaled her with terrifying stories of the old country and taught her how to swear in Sicilian. Afternoons were spent pacing her gilded cage or reading in the massive library. Evenings were for Enzo. He demanded her presence at dinner every night. It was part of the, quote, arrangement. They rarely spoke. He would read briefings on his tablet, his face a mask of concentration, while Clara pushed expensive food around her plate. The tension between them was a physical thing. It was thickened by her hatred of her confinement and his simmering frustration with her defiance. Yet, underneath the hostility, there was something else, a magnetic pull. She would catch him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his gaze intense and possessive, and she hated herself for noticing how the firelight caught the sharp angles of his jaw, or how his shirt stretched across his broad shoulders. He was a monster, a murderer. She couldn't forget that. The outside world began to bleed in. Enzo was gone more often, returning late at night smelling of smoke and cordite. The guards were doubled. The atmosphere in the house became brittle. One rainy Tuesday night, Enzo didn't come home for dinner. Donatella was asleep. Clara was restless. She wandered down to the library, unable to sleep. Around 2 a.m., the front doors slammed open. Clara hid behind a towering bookshelf, peeking through a gap in the volumes. Sterling half-carried Enzo into the foyer. Enzo was pale, his face slick with sweat. His left arm hung uselessly at his side, and the sleeve of his white shirt was soaked in bright red blood. "Get the doctor," Sterling barked at a guard. "No doctor," Enzo gritted out, his voice strained with pain. "No outsiders. Not tonight." "Boss, you're losing too much blood. The bullet grazed the artery." "I said no!" Enzo roared, then swayed, nearly collapsing. Clara didn't think. The nurse in her took over. She stepped out from behind the bookshelf. "Put him on the sofa in the parlor. Now," Clara ordered, her voice echoing in the large space. Sterling hesitated, looking at Enzo. "Do what she says," Enzo whispered, his eyes rolling back slightly. They laid him on an antique velvet sofa that was probably worth more than Clara's life. Clara rushed to the kitchen, grabbing her emergency medical kit she'd insisted Sterling bring from her apartment. She knelt beside Enzo. Up close, the damage was worse. A through-and-through shot to the upper bicep. It was messy, and he was bleeding out. "I need to cut the shirt," she said, taking scissors. Enzo nodded weakly. His eyes were hazy, fixed on her face. She worked quickly, her hand steady, despite her racing heart. She cleaned the wound, packed it with clotting gauze, and applied a pressure tourniquet. He didn't make a sound, though his jaw muscles bulged with the effort of staying silent. "You need stitches and antibiotics, and a blood transfusion wouldn't hurt," she murmured, checking his pulse. It was fast and thready. "Just stitch it," Enzo ground out. "I'll live." She disinfected a needle. "This is going to hurt. I don't have lidocaine strong enough for this." "Do it." For the next hour, Clara Vance stitched up the man who held her prisoner. She sat on the floor, covered in his blood, mending his flesh. When she was finished, she bandaged the arm and sat back on her heels, exhausted. Enzo looked at his arm, then at her. The coldness in his eyes had thawed slightly, replaced by a heavy, drugged intensity. "You could have let me bleed out," he murmured. "You could have let me die and walked out the front door." Clara met his gaze, wiping a smudge of blood from her cheek. "I told you the first night, Enzo. I'm a nurse. I save lives, even the ones that probably don't deserve saving." Enzo reached out with his good hand. Clara flinched, expecting violence. Instead, his rough thumb traced the line of her jaw, sending a shiver down her spine. "You are a very strange woman, Clara Vance," he whispered. "And you are going to be the death of me." The moment hung in the air, charged and dangerous. Then Sterling burst into the room, his face grim. "Boss, we got a problem. A big one." Enzo sat up, wincing, the ruthless Don immediately replacing the wounded man. "What is it?" "The Gallaghers. They hit the docks, burned 2 warehouses to the ground. And they left a message." "What message?" Sterling looked at Clara, then back at Enzo. They said they know the engagement is fake. They said they know she's just a nurse, and they're coming for her tomorrow night. Enzo's face turned to stone. He looked at Clara, his eyes hardening again into impenetrable steel. "Get the car ready," Enzo ordered, standing up despite his injury. The blood seeped through the fresh bandages. "Where are you going?" Clara asked, rising to her feet. "To end this," Enzo growled. "Once and for all." Tonight, the streets of Seattle run red. He walked out into the night, leaving Clara alone in the blood-stained parlor, realizing with dawning horror that by saving him tonight, she might have just doomed herself. The silence that followed Enzo's departure was heavier than the storm raging outside. The massive front doors clicked shut, locking automatically. But the sound felt less like security and more like the ceiling of a tomb. Clara stood in the foyer for a long moment, staring at the bloodstains on the expensive Persian rug. Her hands were still trembling. She had just performed surgery on a crime lord in his living room. The absurdity of her life over the last 2 weeks hit her like a wave of nausea. "Miss Vance," a voice rumbled from the shadows. Clara jumped. It was Marcus, the head of the night security detail. He was a bear of a man, older than the others, with graying temples and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. He had always been polite to her, unlike Sterling, who treated her like a piece of luggage. "Marcus," Clara breathed. I need to check on Donatella." She might have heard the commotion. "Mrs. Valenti is sleeping," Marcus said, stepping into the light of the chandelier. He checked his watch. "The boss has taken Sterling and the A-team to the docks. We are on lockdown. No one in, no one out." "Okay," Clara nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. "I'll go upstairs." She walked up the grand staircase, feeling Marcus's eyes on her back. Something felt wrong. The air in the house had shifted. It was too quiet. Usually, there were guards patrolling the upper corridors, but the hallway leading to Donatella's suite was empty. Clara reached Donatella's door and pushed it open softly. The room was dark, lit only by the monitor of the medical equipment Clara had set up. Donatella was asleep, her breathing rhythmic. Clara sat in the armchair by the bed, listening to the rain lash against the bulletproof glass. She closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her. Click. The sound was distinct. It was the sound of the electronic lock on the main gates disengaging. Clara's eyes snapped open. She moved to the window. From her vantage point on the second floor, she could see the driveway. The massive iron gates, which were supposed to be sealed tight, were slowly swinging open. Headlights cut through the darkness. 3 SUVs rolled up the driveway, their lights off, engines humming low. These weren't Valenti cars. Valenti cars were always black sedans. These were silver behemoths. "Marcus," Clara whispered, running to the bedroom door. She threw it open and sprinted into the hallway. "Marcus, the gates are open. Someone is here." She reached the top of the stairs and froze. Below, in the foyer, Marcus was standing by the front doors. He wasn't reaching for his weapon. He was unlocking the deadbolts. "Marcus, what are you doing?" Clara screamed, her voice echoing off the marble walls. Marcus looked up. His face was impassive, sad even. "Go back to your room, Clara. This doesn't have to involve you. They just want the old woman." The blood drained from Clara's face. You let them in." "Enzo is weak," Marcus said, his voice hardening. "He risks the whole family for his mother. He starts wars for a nurse. The Gallaghers offered a truce, peace. All they want is the head of the snake." "He's her son. You're betraying him." "I'm saving the family business," Marcus replied coldly. He pushed the doors open. Men poured into the foyer. They wore masks and tactical gear. Among them walked a man in a tan trench coat, his face uncovered. He had pale skin, red hair, and a smile that looked like a razor blade. Cillian Gallagher. "Where is she?" Cillian asked, his voice light and airy, as if he were asking for directions to the bathroom. Marcus pointed up the stairs. "First door on the left. The girl is up there, too." Cillian looked up and locked eyes with Clara. He grinned. "Well, hello there, Cinderella. Enzo's little pet. Clara didn't wait. She turned and sprinted back to Donatella's room, slamming the heavy oak door and engaging the deadbolt. She dragged a heavy dresser in front of it, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Clara!" Donatella's voice was groggy. She was waking up. "What is happening?" "We're under attack," Clara said, rushing to the bed. "Marcus betrayed us. The Gallaghers are inside." Donatella's eyes sharpened instantly. The drowsiness vanished. She tried to sit up, wincing. "My gun, nightstand." Clara opened the drawer. There was a pearl-handled revolver. She grabbed it, her hands shaking. She had never fired a gun in her life. "Do you know how to use it?" Donatella asked. "Point and shoot?" Clara squeaked. "Aim for the center mass." "Do not hesitate," Donatella commanded, sounding every bit the Mafia matriarch. "Help me up. We go to the panic room behind the closet." Bang! The bedroom door shuddered. Someone had kicked it. "Open up, ladies." Cillian's voice came through the wood. "We just want to talk. And by talk, I mean burn this house to the ground with you inside." Clara hauled Donatella out of bed. The older woman groaned, her stitches pulling, but she stayed on her feet. They hobbled toward the walk-in closet. Crash! The door splintered. The dresser scraped across the floor as the wood gave way. "Go!" Donatella hissed, pushing Clara toward the hidden panel in the back of the closet. "Get inside and lock it. Leave me. I will slow you down." "No!" Clara grabbed Donatella's arm. "I saved you once. I'm doing it again. Get in!" She shoved Donatella into the dark, narrow space of the panic room and scrambled in after her. Just as Clara's fingers hit the keypad to seal the magnetic door, a hand shot through the gap, grabbing her ankle. Clara screamed, kicking out wildly. She connected with a face. There was a grunt of pain, and the grip loosened. Clara hit the button. Whir-thud. The steel door slammed shut, sealing them in darkness. Outside, muffled shouting and pounding against the steel began. But the panic room was designed to withstand a bomb. They were safe for the moment. But they were trapped. "Is there a phone in here?" Clara asked, fumbling for the light switch. The emergency red lights flickered on. "Dedicated line to Enzo," Donatella said, sliding down the wall to sit on the floor, clutching her side. "But the lines might be cut." Clara picked up the red phone on the wall. Silence. "Dead," Clara whispered. Donatella closed her eyes. "Marcus knows about this room. He knows the ventilation codes. They will smoke us out." "How long do we have?" 20 minutes, maybe less." Clara sank to the floor. "Enzo is at the docks. He thinks the fight is there. He won't know. He won't come back in time." Donatella reached out and took Clara's hand. "You did well, child. You fought." "I don't want to die in a closet," Clara said, tears stinging her eyes. "Then pray," Donatella whispered. "Pray that my son realizes he walked into a trap before it is too late." Lorenzo Valenti stood amidst the burning wreckage of the shipyard warehouse. His arm throbbed with a dull, sickening ache, but the adrenaline kept him focused. The firefight had been short. Brutal. But something was wrong. There were only a dozen Gallagher men. Low-level soldiers. No captains. And Cillian Gallagher wasn't here. Enzo walked over to a wounded man crawling through the gravel. He placed his boot on the man's chest. "Where is Cillian?" Enzo barked, pressing down on the man's ribs. The man coughed blood and laughed. "He's not here, Valenti. You're the only one stupid enough to come out in the rain." "Where is he?" Enzo drew his sidearm. "He's visiting your mother. Said he wanted to pay his respects." The man grinned, his teeth stained red. "And kiss your pretty little fiancée." Ice flooded Enzo's veins. The ambush at the docks was a diversion. "Sterling!" Enzo roared, turning back to his SUV. "It's a decoy! Back to the house! Now!" They piled into the vehicles. Enzo drove the lead car himself, one-handed, ignoring the searing pain in his shoulder. He floored the accelerator, the engine screaming as the speedometer climbed past 100 miles per hour. Please, he thought, a prayer he hadn't said in years echoing in his mind. Please, let her be alive. Don't let them touch her. He wasn't thinking about the Empire. He wasn't even thinking about his mother, who he knew was tough as nails. He was thinking about Clara. Clara with her defiant eyes. Clara who stitched him up. Clara who ripped up his money. The drive took 20 minutes. It felt like 20 years. When they crested the hill leading to the estate, Enzo saw the smoke. It was rising from the east wing. "Smash the gate!" Enzo ordered into his radio. The convoy didn't slow down. The lead SUV rammed the wrought iron gates, tearing them off their hinges in a shower of sparks. The courtyard was a war zone. Gallagher men were everywhere. Enzo's car screeched to a halt. He kicked the door open, his gun raised. "Kill them all!" Enzo screamed, his voice a primal roar. "Leave no one standing!" Sterling and the Valenti guards unleashed hell. Automatic gunfire lit up the night. Enzo moved through the chaos like a wraith, shooting with deadly precision. He took a bullet to his vest, stumbled, but kept moving. He had to get inside. He reached the front doors. They were wide open. Marcus's body lay on the steps, a bullet hole in the back of his head. The Gallaghers didn't like traitors either, it seemed. Enzo stepped over the body of the man he had trusted for 15 years and entered the foyer. "Cillian!" Enzo yelled. "Come out and die!" "Up here, Valenti!" Enzo looked up to the balcony landing. Cillian Gallagher stood there holding a canister of military-grade tear gas. He was smiling. "Your panic room has excellent ventilation," Cillian sneered. "I just dropped 2 of these down the intake pipe. They should be choking right about now." Enzo saw red. Pure, blinding crimson. He fired. Cillian ducked behind a marble pillar, laughing. "Go get 'em, boss!" Sterling shouted, covering the stairs with suppressive fire as more Gallagher goons appeared on the landing. "We'll handle the trash!" Enzo took the stairs 3 at a time. His injured arm was burning, the stitches likely torn, blood soaking his shirt again. He didn't care. He reached the top landing. Cillian stepped out, a knife in hand, lunging for Enzo. Enzo didn't dodge. He stepped into the attack. He caught Cillian's wrist with his good hand, twisted it with a bone-crunching snap, and drove his knee into Cillian's stomach. Cillian doubled over, gasping. Enzo grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the railing. "Code," Enzo snarled, pressing the barrel of his gun into Cillian's eye socket. "Ventilation override code. Now." "Go to hell," Cillian wheezed. Enzo didn't hesitate. He shot Cillian in the kneecap. The scream was deafening. "Code." 7-7 Alpha, Cillian shrieked. Enzo pistol-whipped him into unconsciousness and dropped him on the floor. He ran to the master bedroom. The room was filled with smoke seeping from the closet. Enzo smashed the keypad on the panic room door. 7-7A. The magnetic seals hissed. The door popped open. Thick white smoke billowed out. "Clara! Mama!" Enzo dropped to his knees, crawling into the haze. He found them on the floor. Donatella was unconscious, her breathing shallow. Clara was slumped over her, holding a wet cloth over Donatella's face, having sacrificed her own protection to filter the air for the older woman. Clara wasn't moving. "No, no, no," Enzo choked out. He grabbed Clara with his good arm and dragged her out into the bedroom, then went back for his mother. Sterling appeared at the door, his face soot-stained. "Hostiles are neutralized, boss. We secured the perimeter." "Get the oxygen," Enzo yelled, ripping the mask off a fallen Gallagher mercenary's tactical gear. He pressed it to Clara's face. "Breathe, damn it, breathe!" He pumped her chest gently. "Clara, wake up. You don't get to die. You don't get to leave me." For a terrible minute there was nothing, just the sound of distant sirens and the rain. Then Clara gasped. Her body convulsed as she inhaled the oxygen. She coughed violently, her eyes fluttering open. She looked up, dazed, her face smeared with soot. She saw Enzo hovering over her, his face twisted in raw agony and relief, tears cutting tracks through the blood on his cheeks. "Enzo," she croaked. "I'm here," he whispered, his voice breaking. He pulled her into his chest, burying his face in her hair. He held her so tight it must have hurt, but she didn't pull away. "I'm here. I got you." "Your mother." "She's breathing. Sterling has her. She's tough." Clara slumped against him, the adrenaline finally fading, leaving only darkness. "You came back." "I will always come back for you." Enzo vowed into her hair. Always. 3 days later, the Valenti estate was quiet. The bodies had been removed. The blood had been scrubbed away. The broken gates were being repaired. Clara sat on the edge of the bed in the guest suite. Her bags were packed. She looked at the room one last time. It was a beautiful cage, but a cage nonetheless. She touched the bruise on her cheek where the door frame had hit her during the escape. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," she said softly. Enzo entered. He looked different. The ruthless armor was gone. He wore a simple black sweater and jeans. His arm was in a sling. He looked tired, human. "You are packing," he said, looking at the suitcase. "Sterling said the threat is gone. Cillian is in custody, or whatever you do with people like him. The Gallaghers are disbanded." "They are finished," Enzo confirmed. "The city is ours, or mine, I suppose." He walked over to the window, looking out at the gray Seattle sky. "I spoke to my mother. She told me what you did. You gave her the air supply. You almost died to save her. Again. She's a good woman, underneath all the scary Mafia stuff," Clara said with a faint smile. Enzo turned to face her. "I was wrong." Clara blinked. "Excuse me?" "I was wrong," Enzo repeated, stepping closer. "To kidnap you, to force you into this life, to put that ring on your finger without asking. I thought I could own you, but you cannot own a wildfire. You just burn yourself trying to hold it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. He placed it on the bed next to her suitcase. "There is a plane ticket to Paris in there, and a bank account in your name with $5 million. Enough to start over, finish medical school, buy a hospital if you want." Clara looked at the envelope, then at him. "You're letting me go?" "I am setting you free," Enzo corrected softly. "The guards will drive you to the airport. You will never see me again. You will be safe." He waited for her to grab the envelope. He expected her to run, to flee the monster who had brought violence to her doorstep. Clara stood up. She picked up the envelope. She weighed it in her hand. Then she dropped it on the floor. Enzo's eyes widened. "Clara?" Clara walked up to him. She took his hand, the good one, and placed it on her waist. "You really don't get it, do you, Lorenzo?" she whispered. "Get what?" "I don't want to be safe. I've been safe my whole life. Safe and poor and lonely." She looked up into his steel blue eyes. "When you came back for me, when you pulled me out of that room, that was the first time in my life I felt like I really mattered to someone." "You matter more than my life," Enzo confessed, his voice rough. "But this life, it is dangerous. It is blood and darkness." "I'm a nurse, Enzo. I'm not afraid of blood." She reached up and touched his jaw. "And as for the darkness, maybe you just need someone to hold the light." Enzo stared at her, hope warring with disbelief in his eyes. "If you stay, there is no going back. You will be mine. Fully. Forever." Clara smiled, and it was the most dangerous thing Enzo had ever seen. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the diamond ring she had taken off earlier. She slid it back onto her finger. "I'm not yours, Enzo," she said fiercely. "We're ours." Enzo let out a shuddering breath and crashed his mouth down onto hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a promise, a seal, a surrender. The nurse and the boss, the healer and the killer, they ruled Seattle for 40 years. And legend has it, the only person Lorenzo Valenti ever feared was the woman who once stitched his wounds and stole his heart in a rainy alleyway. Wow. Talk about a power couple. Clara went from saving a life in an alley to ruling the city. It just goes to show sometimes the people we save end up saving us right back. I want to know what you would have done. If Enzo offered you that envelope with $5 million and a ticket to Paris, would you have taken the money and ran? Or would you have stayed for the danger and the romance? Be honest. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new story. We drop new drama every Tuesday and Friday. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.